Hi Eva, good morning.
Hi Paul, good morning.
How are you?
Well, I'm really well. It's the summer holiday here for me, and I'm just really settled into a different sort of pace, I'd say. And I'm a few weeks ahead of you, and we can talk a little bit more about why that is, but it just means that you've got all that coming.
Yeah, I mean the academic year's just ended here, so I'm mentally toast, and it's good to see you all nice and relaxed. So that's great. So I was looking at your Instagram overview, and it says Eva Brandt, artist development, vocal coach, Alexander technique, and counselling.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot to unravel.
Yeah, there is a lot. I've sort of chosen 4 sort of quarters. I think it gives a nice sort of stability. But over the years, it's changed a lot. I could also add producer, songwriter, artist. But that's not particularly where my focus is at the moment. So it's something that I keep updating. The counselling is a recent development, which I'll talk a little bit more about, if you like. It's really interesting. And I think for me, the social media is a business card that in the old days, we had to go and get it printed, and then we had 1,000 cards lying in a drawer somewhere, and then a new idea came along, and a new business name, and at least for me. And then I was like, oh no, what now? And what I love about something like Instagram or, social media is that you can just go in and change it if that's what you want, or update it, I'd say, to help your focus. This is what I'm offering. This is what I like to attract at the moment. The Alexander technique for me is probably the oldest thing that's been there. It's since 1999. I qualified as an Alexander technique teacher in last century. Can you believe it? Wow. December 99. But it's also something that I then moved away from, and I wanted to get further into the music, and I think I wasn't quite ready for the commitment of this type of teaching, where you really support people. I mean, I've always been a teacher, and I've always been teaching music, but this had another dimension, which is really to help people look after their well-being and their, their balance, their posture, but also their whole mindset. Yeah. And since we returned from London in 2019, which is now 6 years, believe it or not, suddenly all this came back. I was ready. I was ready to be the teacher that I am today, where I have the Alexander technique. I teach music. I just teach songwriting, and I'm a vocal coach. And then the last edition is that I've done a diploma in psychotherapy. So that's kind of coming together really nicely as the what I feel I can offer people that come through my door.
Yeah, so it seems to me that whether you write music, perform it, teach it, your passion is people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, which is really nice.
Yeah, the passion is people and the experience is music. And I think, many times I've felt, am I moving away from music? Or is it, am I done with music? When, particularly in the periods where I'm not performing very much myself, it's always sort of, there's a little bit of sort of sadness, that I feel, is this the end now? Or sometimes actually, and I'd love your view on this, fatigue, basically. I don't feel creatively that I've got much to give. And over the years, I've become better at just letting that happen. Yeah. But at the same time, it's also maintaining a level of fitness to a certain degree, you know, just not letting yourself go in the fact that, you know, I'm lucky that I have a choir that I am, you know, that I'm leading. So I have to keep my performance skills up in terms of accompanying them and leading this. And as a singing coach, you know, I have to have my own singing abilities fine-tuned. But the desire to stand in the forefront, in front of a band or on stage or gigging, it's much less these days than it used to be. And that's not just the last few years. That's probably been the last decade that I've been moving away from that and more working in the studio. I love the studio environment, and you know, you've been over to visit me here in Copenhagen. It is just an absolutely fantastic space to be working with music, and particularly if you're creating your own, you know, if you're doing original music. So I don't know if that.
Did you find that like relocating back to Copenhagen from London, like did that help you self-regulate? Like, did it give you a different pace of life? Did it give you that balance that you were speaking of a moment ago, or is it just completely different? And it comes with a different set of challenges, but challenges nonetheless. Like, how do you, how did you adjust from Copenhagen to London and then back?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and I feel that the sort of the sentence that comes to mind is needs must. You know, I felt that I'd moved. I mean, I moved to London in 1997 to do this Alexander course. It was a 3-year course, and after that I was very hungry for music. After that I was doing a music degree here in Copenhagen, which was then put on pause for several reasons, but mainly the opportunity to go and do this course in London. So the intention was to come back and carry on with my music studies, but life happened in the 3 years I was in London. I met my husband, and also I felt incredibly at home. London was, in those 3 years, you know, where I could see myself. I felt a sense of freedom, and a sort of both mentally, but also creative freedom. But there was also something about being in such a big city. I had to work so hard. Nobody knew me. I had no contact. I had no, you know, the Alexander world wasn't really based. It wasn't a music college. I didn't just meet loads of like-minded people that I could make, you know, play in bands with. But from that little group of people, I still managed. I had a duo with a classical cellist, and he played my songs, and so there was sort of I didn't have to follow any script, so it was very, very liberating, and we settled in London and started a family, and 20 years went by very quickly, and in that time, you know, I did my music studies, and I did a master in composition, and I sort of fell into the production. I did a course that was advertised in a Time Out, I think, and I thought, oh, this looks interesting. And that was the beginning of this, you know, opening up this door. Actually, you know, like a DAW, a door, which was very much based around something, you know, like Logic. It was early days. So I suddenly found myself in this incredibly interesting time where things were shifting from analog in the recording studios to digital setups.
Yeah.
And that you very quickly knew as much as your teacher. So we all had to sort of work together in figuring this out. There were new updates all the time. It was very costly. A computer, I remember I bought my first Apple Mac for 1,500, I think. £1,500. It was a lot of money. First version of Logic was £800. So a lot of sort of investment into this that was then also very quickly outdated. It was a fascinating time. And I actually I started a studio with my old teacher. Well, he wasn't old, but my teacher and we were just there together making that switch from all the analog equipment that he had and had collected over the years, and then I felt very, very comfortable in this digital realm of working with Logic, and I very quickly found that I was very good at it. And it was interesting times, and we were working out from a place called Community Music, which over the years has also given me probably the most sort of solid community that then sort of things started moving very quickly. I met mainly like-minded people that had that balance of working in education, in the sort of underground music as well, in terms of, Asian music, Asian underground, fusion, a lot of dub, rap, hip hop, and I was sort of suddenly in the middle of this culture that I just couldn't have imagined coming from here. Copenhagen is a very jazz-orientated city, so I came from a place where if you want to get into the conservatory, you had to be. It was a very sort of narrow gap. And suddenly in London, I just found that it was just a melting pot of cultures and music, and I started working with something called an Akai MPC sampler, and that was used mainly for people that were doing hip hop and Jay Dilla sort of style, and then I was there cutting up klezmer music and East European, folk music with sort of Tibetan or Mongolian overtones, and they just thought I was crazy, but it was just, there was no judgment. It was a good time, a very interesting time, which now, interestingly, since I've arrived back here in Denmark and I tell people that I was there at that time, they go, oh my God, I've been studying community music on my course. So I think, oh, okay, it makes you feel a little old, but it also, I thought, you just don't know that you're part of something, And I make it sound like it was all fun and games, but it was hard. It was really, really hard to get into because I was so different, I came from such a different background, a Danish girl. I grew up in the countryside and had a very supported, easy life here. And my main struggles, I think, was feeling not good enough, which is something I think we should dive into a little bit more as well. And I think what I learned when I got to London was that there was no space for that. There was just no space for me sort of, feeling sorry for myself and think, oh, I'm not good enough. Because I think it was so obvious how different I was and who was I comparing myself to.
So how did you, well, I mean, imposter syndrome, I mean, that's kind of followed me all throughout my career.
Yeah.
And I don't even know why. Like if I reflect, like I've spoken about this before. Like I know I can play a bit. I know I can teach a bit. Like I don't know what I was trying to prove, but I suppose that comes with age and experience, maybe, or reflection, where actually, I don't know, like maybe you wake up one day and think, actually, this was okay. Like, it might not be representative of where I'm at today, but then that's where I was at, and that's okay.
I think the term imposter syndrome is very sort of set up as if it's external. It's something that our surroundings is doing to us. But for me, it's very linked to the ego. Imposter syndrome is you telling yourself that you're not good enough and that you don't belong. It's not the people around you that say that. Actually, a lot of the case, they would find, if you reveal that this is how you're feeling, a lot of the people in that current situation will say, well, actually, I'm feeling the same. And then that's maybe something that should be then, talked about. That, all right, what is it that, why is this situation making us all feel uncomfortable? Are we in competition with each other? Or are we, or is it that we can turn it around and say, wow, I feel so humbled to be here with you. I feel so grateful that you and I are having this chat. I look up to you very much. I think you're an incredible educator. I think you're an incredible entrepreneur. But I'm not in competition with you. No. And it's something that can very quickly be put to bed if we are honest with ourselves and if we're able to speak it out, if we're able to say, okay, because then it just puts a stop to this part sort of running away with ourselves, which for me is an ego that sort of gets out of control. And I'm not in we're not selfless people. It's like we need to put ourselves first, in order to be able to give. And you and I know that as educators as well. If we were just giving everything, there's nothing left, at the end of the year or at the end of the day, at the end of the lesson. So all the time making this an exchange where it's mutual. The student grows from seeing that you're enjoying being in this lesson with them, being in this space with them. And you're giving me that smile now, where I know it's like, yes, that's it.
That's it. No, exactly. I mean, you are really kind to me. I mean, I struggle with compliments, full stop. Like I just can't, I don't know why, but So I am grateful to you. You know that. I'm grateful for our friendship, and you support me in other ways as well. Like you contributed to some music that we're making, and then a couple of years ago, I visited you at your home, and we made some music, and we hung out in the city, and it was great. Like it was a great thing to do as friends.
And for me, it's very much what music is about, and why I'm not ever going to let go of it. It might not be the main tagline on my Instagram, but music for me is the sort of what holds the form. And even if I feel I'm moving away from it in the actual sort of creation of it, it holds the form, and it gives a sort of baseline of what I feel I've got in common with people. And even if it's so running the choir, for instance, that's 40 people who don't have much music in their life in the week, apart from listening to it in the car on their way home, or and to have that opportunity for an hour and a half a week to open up that joy together, where we're singing together, and to lead that is just incredible. And there's something, I remember I was asked to take that on when I came out here, and I had sleepless nights. I was so concerned about that responsibility. So I think part of it for me is that I take the sort of opportunities that come to me very seriously. Yeah. It's not something I take for granted, and I don't. I sort of feel I need to work. I mean, I have a tendency to take on new things. I'm terribly curious, and I will sort of have a look what's through this door. And it makes me feel alive, and it makes me work hard to then try and do this. But over the years, I've stopped myself from then needing to be the best or expecting from myself that I need to then be an expert at it. I'm much better giving myself time. But having said that, I'm also much better at then putting the work in. I don't think we should ever call ourselves lazy, because I don't think if we need time to not do something one day, or if we're not, productive, there is this sort of idea that, that, oh, you're lazy or you're procrastinating. But it's often because we're waiting for, to figure out how we do the next thing. Maybe we don't know yet, maybe we haven't learned yet how to do it. And I'm much better at that. I'm much better at saying, all right, well, this is still growing. But while that's happening, I'm more structured than I used to be, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting you say, like, I think as creatives, especially in a social media world where I was talking to a friend last week, and I said to him that I'm particularly rubbish, I'm particularly bad at social media, but it doesn't mean that I'm not playing, or I'm not being creative, or I'm not teaching. I just don't post it, and I think as creatives, well, speaking for myself, the older I've gotten, the more I realise that it's okay to not pursue music every single day. If emotionally, physically, if I'm just not feeling it, I won't play, because there's no inspiration, there's no point, there's no need. And yeah, okay, I get a bit rusty sometimes, but the cumulative knowledge and practice, it's in there, it's in me. So I think the same goes for when you're dealing with different environments where you're kind of like, I might be sat still thinking, but I'm working really hard. Like I'm processing. I'm problem solving, or I'm trying to create something. Maybe it's a scheme of work for a student or students, or but I don't just dive straight into a computer. I don't even dive straight into a notebook. Sometimes I might go for a walk and think it through. And there's a huge freedom in what we do that allows us to take a day for a walk and then come back and go, well, I've solved it, or in your case you might go riding and like you've solved it, right? And I've spoken with many people about like the lifestyle element of what we do, but also the sense of belonging, the sense of us belonging to a community. Like I listen to you, you're providing so many opportunities for so many people. If I was to transpose that to me, I think I do the same. I think I make opportunities for people, but I make more opportunities when they match me emotionally. They don't need to match me. They don't need to match me in time or ability or anything like that. But if they're emotionally as engaged as I am, we feed each other. So that sense of belonging is really important to me.
Yeah, and I think, I'm someone who had to, when you move country, you move into a different culture, you need to find that sense of belonging, and sometimes you need to make do, in certain environments for a while, and I became a bit of a sort of shapeshifter,
right? Because
the belonging part was very important to me. I'd been to London already, where I went over with a boyfriend who was doing a music course, and he had that community where I actually thought that I was going to be able to just find that in the 3 months we were there. And I've really met myself. I must have been maybe 21 or 22. I really met myself in those months because I was so lonely. And I couldn't, and I, for the first time, found that it just wasn't enough to just, things just didn't happen by themselves. It isn't, And I went home and interestingly enough, then I came back. And the second time I came back to London on my own, I'd started this course, and then that was my community for those 3 years that I was studying. And then from that, I stepped into I was working in the music school, and then I found a different course. But it took a long time. It didn't take so long to find that sort of community. But it took a long time to make friends that really sort of resonated with me. And so one of the things that I've become very good at is that when I go in as an educator, for instance, but also when I work as a coach, is to look at how this is happening for this, student or a person that come, what have they got in terms of support around them. And as an example, I teach music, songwriting in a college. And when I was brought in, the 2 students that were there were by themselves. They were songwriters on this incredible music course, very, very skillful musicians, classical and contemporary. But the songwriters were just there, songwriters writing songs for themselves. Yeah. Not even with each other, but just by themselves. And one of the first things that I started addressing with the director and with the other teachers was I said, these songwriters need to be part of something here. They need to write for the bands, they need to be together, and they need to do something. There needs to be a songwriting event. And they, I'm not saying that wasn't something that they tried, but they hadn't sort of quite succeeded because there was an expectancy that the students should make it happen by themselves.
Yeah. Okay.
And these students are between 16, 20, or 21. You think, okay, well, you're a young adult, but it's incredibly hard. And this opportunity of something happening, if it's not there, and that I think was my experience in London, if it's not there for you when you arrive, it is incredibly hard to open these doors. It takes a lot of confidence, and if you have the confidence, great. When I moved to London, there were people that moved over from Denmark, and they would just go straight into the jam sessions on the stages and just play, just get up there and play. And I found that the musicians generally, actually particularly the drummers, but were very good at that. But the songwriters and the artists who were just creating their own music, it wasn't so easy for them. So I had a real understanding why it was difficult at this college for the songwriters to just blend in, because they didn't want to be in a band to play cover songs. They wanted to be in a band that played their music. So one of the first things we established was that they had the opportunity to go in and play a song with the band, And then that meant that, suddenly now they knew the guitarist, or they knew, And it was
so that community again, right?
It was really simple, but just to fast forward 4 years, we now have a group lesson for songwriters only. We have a listening room, which is a session where it's had many sort of editions, but where they share their music with each other, get feedback with the producers as well. We got several events during the year where they're collaborating with the other musicians. So the new students that come in now will start at the college in a few weeks. They're now entering into a room where other songwriters are receiving them, saying, "Hey, welcome. Lovely to see you. Let's hear what you're up to. Let's hear, what did you play at your audition? Come on, let's hear your stuff. And this is what I've been working on." And they also see the other students coming back after a summer holiday, going, "Oh, I'm so pleased, I've missed you guys."
That's great.
And that didn't take any resources much. It's like, yes, I built up my hours, but it's not cost us much to do that. But it does need someone who is in that corner all the time saying, what about the songwriters?
Yeah.
So you need somebody cheering for you, and we all need that, And I mean, you and I know that as examiners, that the candidate that walks through the door to take an exam, they haven't got there by themselves. Actually, in most cases, they won't actually physically have got there by themselves either. There will be a parent or a carer that's taken them there, or and there's somebody sitting out there waiting for them to receive them when they come out from this exam and say, hey, how did it go? You know, how was the examiner? You know, what do you think? You know, so we know how important it is to have this support around us, and what a little part, say, taking an exam is to the wider journey, but also how important that moment is. And if it's okay with you, I'd love to talk a little bit about this, you know, these moments where we put ourselves forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, whether that's auditions or exams or performances. Those moments where we get up there and we say, right, this is where I'm at, you know. I'm exposed, I'm nervous, but I've chosen to be here. And I think this is a really important point. You know, I have been in situations where the student or the candidate has most certainly not chosen to be there, but it's actually very rare. I think when you got the very young students, they are part of a program with the school where they say, oh, you know, and at the end of the year, you know, you'll take a little exam. But, you know, the examiner is friendly and, you know, it would just be part of it. And then we'll have a little get together and celebrate afterwards. But in most of the cases, when you start dealing with older students and candidates, there's a part of them that's driven them to being at that point, you know. And at the same time, that is, it can be very sort of confusing, not just as a young person, but also with the adults that we see coming in for their exams, where they say, I feel awful. I feel terrible. I'm so nervous. I am, and I'm getting angry with myself. You know, what is it? What's happening here? Get this over with. You know, why am I doing this to myself? And when I work with my students who might also suffer from getting up on that stage, and one of the first things I noticed when I arrived at this college was that there was something real missing. There was something missing that encouraged them to get up there and break through that barrier. So they simply didn't. And then suddenly that window of opportunity was starting to close. So they simply didn't want to expose themselves. They didn't want to play their things for the others.
Yeah.
So
I mean, there's so much. I mean, they are shared experiences. You know, it's the same. It must be the same for everyone. But like for me, most recently, there was I was sat opposite a young person who was taking an exam, and he was fearless, absolutely fearless, and you know, wasn't listening to my guidance from the rubric, right? You know, he just wasn't listening. So okay, fine, that's that. But then the people my age who I was sat across, they were very brave, and they played wonderfully. Like but they, as soon as they kind of relaxed into it and realised that I wasn't a monster and that we were, you know, I was smiling and chatting and asking how they were, and you know, and you can just see the guard drop in a little bit, and they settle into their performance. And for me, that's the best part of it, because in the supply chain of it, when we're sat there assessing these people, we're just reviewing a snapshot of their journey, right? That's it. We and all the work that the teacher's done to get them there is, well, there's a lot. I mean, they will have worked very hard together as a team, and we need to work hard to not damage that relationship. You know.
You know, and if you're talking about exams, then there is a very specific structure that we can only deviate from to a certain extent, you know, and I've learned so much from these years and examining, because there's so much we can do with nonverbal communication, you know, how we make somebody feel, you know. And I remember when I started examining over 15 years ago, one of the hardest part was just to say thank you at the end of something, you know, not going, oh, well done, or great, or you know, that was amazing, or, you know, just to say thank you, but say thank you in a very, I'm listening to you, I heard all of that.
Yeah.
I wasn't just, oh, thank you, you know, it's like, thank you, just really meaning that, and looking at them and paying attention, and not, back then we had to do the handwritten reports, but, you know, which was super hard, and having to learn to have all these, you know, you're juggling 6, 7, 8 different things while you're examining. You know, you're listening, you're writing, you're navigating the audio, you're looking at the score, you're looking at the criteria. You know, there's a lot, and you're looking at the candidate. You know, you're looking at the performer in front of you, and that is, you know, must take precedent. You must never let them feel that they're not being looked at. And it's giving me that sort of real holistic way of being present. Which I'm using now in my teaching and in my, when I, you know, with the listening room, for instance, at the college, I say very little. They listen to me in their lessons every week. So I don't, you know, a lot of the time actually they don't ask for my opinion. They'd rather not have it. But I have tried and experimented with, sometimes when we used to do this session, it wasn't scheduled in the time schedule. It was just something that I did voluntary on a Tuesday afternoon, and sometimes it would really run on, you know, and I'd be going, oh, it's like 6 o'clock now, and I was thinking they were still going, oh, actually, you know, some of them that would come and say, oh, I haven't got anything to show, would suddenly sit there and go, actually, I do want to show something. And I would think, actually, I wonder what happens, you know, these guys it's going great, you know, maybe I can just leave. And the minute I would leave, even though I went to the toilet, they would just start petering off. You know, they would suddenly be going. It was sort of, you know, I had to be there to hold that space, and to listen, and to say, hey, you know, I see you, but I didn't have to say anything.
Yeah.
I just had to be in the room, and that's still the case today, actually. And I see that as such an important role, as a teacher, as a mentor, as a parent, you know, just giving them the space to unfold and to sit there with their thoughts, to not talk over them, to not lecture them, to not try and finish their sentences or steer the conversation to something that you want to talk about. Oh, that fits into what I wanted to teach you today. Oh, isn't that interesting? I think it's so important when we're working with exams as teachers. I appreciate that there is a repertoire that should, you know, that we're working towards, that they will be assessed on. Mm-hmm. But even within that, there's so much choice. There's so much choice of keeping a student engaged and making sure that they feel that they have autonomy. You know? They have control and autonomy, and that they're part of that sort of learning progress. Well, you know that as an educator, but I think it's important to keep reminding ourselves that if we drive a little too fast, or drive because we want to achieve something, oh, the exam is in a month, you know, let's go, you know, this you must be doing this. Suddenly we'll start often finding the student, you know, pulling against, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, and they get their own fatigue as well, right?
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
You know, and especially if it's a traditional private lesson model where it might be they might have interaction with a teacher once a week, and there's no deviation from the program.
Absolutely.
It just, it's boring for everybody. So you've got to manage the relationship like you're dealing with people, right? First and foremost.
Yeah, you're dealing with people and different learning curves as well. One of my my very good friends and colleagues told me a story recently where he was preparing a student for an exam, and it was coming, it's a high level exam, diploma, and he was saying, come on, this is not in place yet, and there are these, and the student goes, it's all right, I'm a really good crammer, I know that and he goes, yeah, well, it's not going to really embed, and you're not
Yeah.
going to get there, and come on, and the student goes, no, it'll be all right. And the student actually went in and nailed that exam.
Wow.
And you go, guess what? But I always, this is so interesting, because did that student then nail the exam because he had promised his teacher, who had said, you're not ready, you need to, crack on with this. Yeah. Was it part of that too that made the student go, right, I'm gonna, so there's that extra boost of going, oh my God, maybe he was lucky. But I just think it's an interesting story of where we go, uh-oh, how's this going to play out? And then the student actually rise above our expectations. And the opposite happens too, and I was a student where that would happen, where I'd actually go in and panic would set in. And then that is often perpetuating, you're there, suddenly you're in your mind, you're not focused on the task, you're in a way sometimes out of your body, and you're going, uh-oh, what's happening now? This is not going to end well. And I find that a lot of my journey of the things that you mentioned at the beginning, including the counselling and psychotherapy courses that I've done, has been the curiosity that I've had over the years about this. What is it that happens?
I think that's really interesting, because latterly for me, it's been the leadership that's helped me understand when to push, when to release, when to let people just sort of take the sails out and just let them drift a bit. Because again, it's that it's my understanding the human relationship and managing it, isn't it? Regardless of the application.
Yeah, and understanding that when you go in to do a performance, say in an exam, it's a person that's sitting there listening to you.
Absolutely, yeah.
And understanding that you are performing to that person. They're your audience. And this is another friend of mine actually who's got her own podcast. She's really well, we'll put a link in your podcast. She's called Lucie Burns, and she talks about performance anxiety, and she's written books about it. But she's saying a lot of what happens when an artist go on stage is that they feel, the audience are here to watch me. And she goes, hang on, you're here to entertain this audience.
Yeah.
You're here for them. They're not here to watch you. It's not going to help you. It's actually just going to bring you more in your head, and it won't help your anxiety and your, But if you're there thinking, we're going to have a good time, I'm going to entertain the hell out of these people, we're going to have a good time together, you're more likely to have that happen. And your mindset is outwards instead of inwards. Yeah. And I think when she talked about that, I thought, oh my God, how many candidates and students would I've loved to sort of shake up and say, listen, it's come in and entertain me. Let's have a good time. But if you come in thinking, oh, you're watching me, you're going to judge me, you're going to see all the things I do wrong, you see the things that doesn't go well, and you're going to judge me on that. And you're just, it's very hard to get them out of that space, because I said, well, you just play. Let me do my job of listening here, but you just do your thing. But, when you think, you get in the mind of the listener thinking, oh, this is what they're thinking. No, you don't know that. Just focus on entertaining them and having a good time together.
Yeah.
And interestingly, as you say, all right, well, that sounds like more pressure. No, it's not. Because so you put yourself to the side. So I think that's a really, really, really great tip, really, for anyone, is to just go, well, hang on a minute, who am I entertaining? Who am I performing? Who am I doing this for?
Yeah. Yeah. And is what motivates you now? You know, I mean, listening to you talk about London and working with the community music, teaching, examining. What motivates you? Going forward, where do you get your energy from?
Yeah, so I think when we moved back here, there was a little bit of a reset because I had to let go of a few things. I had to let go of my studio in London, which was an incredible place to have. And then interesting thing happened within the first year of us moving here. Lockdown happened, so it took a lot of things online. So a lot of the things that I thought I had to let go of, including the examining, continued, in a different form online. And you and I met online, while we were doing a diploma assessment, and a different type of community and conversations started to emerge with this new technology, just talking to each other online and getting better at being present online. Trying to examine online live is one of the hardest things I've ever done. You're there in a space in China or Singapore on a little tiny screen to a candidate who's just there playing to what somebody listening in. Is a very, very odd experience. And to try and project yourself so that your presence is as big as it would be in an examination room or in a teaching space, so you're there going, I've got this, I'll hold the structure, you just need to play and play for me. Yeah. So I became very curious about the conversations that we have, also with like-minded educators as yourself. So in answer to your question, what drives me right now is to continuing those sort of type of dialogues about education. I think I was lucky to come out here and with old connections that I had who knew me as a teacher, I was given the opportunity to start teaching in a music school and then in this college now and at the conservatory. So the focus was very much on teaching rather than the studio work and the examining work. And it sort of brought me back to where I started 30 years ago in the teaching, in the classroom. But with all this experience and still understanding that so many things are happening in education, but in life as well, in technology, with AI. And we can exhaust ourselves thinking about it, trying to stay on top of it all. Or we can continue to be curious and to listen and to just try and figure out, well, where are we in all of this? And where is that heart? Where is that connection that we have that got us started playing music in the first place? And not to be too afraid that it's going to be replaced. Yes, you can get your essays could be written by AI, or your learning could be sped up by using ChatGPT to do the research for you. But the curiosity to want to understand something and to learn it, I feel quite reassured that you're still going to have to play that instrument. Put your fingers on the fretboard, or hit the drums, or play the piano, or use your voice.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, I think for me, visiting you at your studio and your home, and actually exploring the city as well, I'd lost my sense of wonder around music. The magic, and part of that was because of how much I know about it. And how experienced, like when you know very little, it's the intrigue of the journey as a creative that's really exciting. So of course, 30 years later, when you had the good, the bad, and the ugly, I found myself adrift. And when I came and spent a few days with you and just played and, you know, got on bicycles and we went around the city, and you know, it was just a kind of really good healthy reset for me, and I became curious again, and but also reassured about the human endeavor, about being creative. So I welcome AI. I'm not afraid of it because it can't stop me being me. It can't stop me getting on a plane and coming to spend a few days with you and coming out of it with hours and hours of recordings that no one may never hear. Like, that's okay. That's all right. It's the human endeavor. That and I think that's for me, that going forward, that's really important, is to not just spend all of my time developing others, but to develop myself within their journey as well. You know, not to be peripheral or just to open the door and say, hey, hi. You know, I've got to be a part of it. And I think it's taken me a few years to figure that out. Yeah.
Well, or a lifetime.
Well, yeah. Hopefully, I've got some time to enjoy it. You know?
Oh no, you most certainly. Well, you are already, and just being able to go back to periods in time or something we've done, like a journey, or even if it's just for a night that we go to a concert and we have this experience. You know, we feel charged. You know, sounds like your batteries were a bit flat when you came out here, and you got plugged in, and you came back fully charged, and you can go back and saying, all right, well, that was a place where I was able to charge, you know, and a lot of people I talk to, you know, they find they have places where, you know, my son commented the other day, like maybe a week into the summer holiday, he was sort of in the garden writing in his journal, and he looked at me, he went, oh my God, Mummy, you're really plugged in, aren't you? And I literally had my fingers in the soil, you know, and I was just, I was pulling up some weed and, you know, arranging this flower bed, and it was so lovely that he really saw how I just, you know, had let go of it, or, you know, I was just fully engaged in this, and it really reminded me that, oh gosh, the garden for me, the garden is a place, and the woods around where we live, but, you know, it's a place that I can really charge my batteries.
I think you saying that in real time is a bit of an epiphany for me, because like everybody else, I'd worked for years online, you know, been locked down, and as a musician, as a creative, when you can't be with people, what do? Okay, you can practice, you can play along with tracks or whatever, but that's not the lifeblood for me. You know, it's people. So to come out to new surroundings, and get recharged, re-energized was really important. So I'm always going to be grateful for that.
Yeah, I'm also thinking about when you were talking about the sort of the freedom, and when we're finding freedom and new things, you know, that sort of the four quadrants of talking about unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence to conscious competence to unconscious competence, that we're sort of moving through that. So basically saying, you know, when we start something new, we have this wonderful freedom, you know, and unconscious incompetence where we just go, hey, you know, this is great, it's easy, you know, this is but we have to move through the stages where it gets tough, you know, we go, oh, actually, I'm not so good, I can play these 3 chords, and I can, you know, who's going to like this? And so we move to a place where we are consciously aware of the competence, to then the flow stage where we're able to do something where we are unconsciously competent in what we're doing. And I think why am I bringing this up now is listening to your sort of, how do we keep ourselves going, when we are competent in a lot of areas in life, and we could just stay there going, right, I'm able to do this, or actually more specifically maybe in the conscious competent place where we're going, I've arrived at this place where it's good enough, it's good enough for my teaching, it's good enough for my band or my, when I'm playing down the pub or but where is that place where I'm lifted out of that place, where I can go back to the beginning and feel, have this unconscious freedom and curiosity.
And
that
I think
happens
that's
again.
That's the sense of wonder.
Oh, absolutely.
The excitement, because when I was a kid, like learning to play the instrument, it was there was no plan.
No.
There was no need. I just wanted to do it.
Yeah.
And then again, fast forward all these years with like social media and so on, where, for example, I must make a video of me playing today. Well, then it just becomes task process driven hard work, because you've got the instrument, you've got the studio, lighting, audio, then you've got to play it really, really well. Then you've got to bounce the sound down and render the video, post the video. It's a lot. And the wonderment, of the fun, just the get on and do it, actually is probably in the scenario that you've created with your students, where they welcome each other and listen to each other, compliment each other on demos or final mixes or whatever stage they're at. But when it becomes a product, when it becomes something else, doesn't it? That it's not the pursuit anymore. It's not the fun of it. It's just
it's just product driven, isn't it? And to say, I've done this. How do you feel about feedback, Paul? Just tell me a little bit about what you, even when I just say the word, what does that make you?
Giving or receiving?
Well, exactly. Let's talk about both.
So how do I feel about it? Well, I mean, I welcome it. We need feedback to improve in life, even if it's your favorite dish that you're eating in the evening. Like, you've got to, did it taste good? Like feedback in its sort of simplest form. Like, how are you today? Yes, I think it's a really interesting question. You and I worked together for a college where the MO was medal and mission. Do you remember that? And I thought that was quite interesting, where you'd say, "Hey, well done. Now think about this." Here, whereas actually for me, and again, I realise it's not wired up like this. It's the mission, it's the areas for improvement that are actually more important. Because, well done, that was really lovely. Let's just, be really broad. Well, great, thank you. What do I do next? It's that, does that answer that in any way?
I knew I threw it a bit at you, because feedback for me is something that I've been very interested in for many years, since I received it myself, and years ago, having maybe not had that much feedback in my music lessons over the years. I was mostly told that I was good at what I did. And then suddenly I met a few closed doors in my early 20s, and it really threw me that underlying, I was told that I was potentially good enough, but there were things that needed improvement, but it wasn't very specific what it was. And it ended up confusing me to an extent where I actually didn't pursue that particular path, and I went and did something else. And interestingly, I'm now working alongside the people who went along that path, and I'm finding that I've learned so much in the years of not just examining and giving feedback. And, you're, as an examiner, yes, you're a facilitator and you are actually paid to give constructive feedback. And what is that then? How do you give constructive feedback in a way that doesn't stop that person's forward journey? Doesn't make them burn their guitar or, stomp on their drums.
I think that's what I meant earlier when I said, do you remember earlier when I said we have a responsibility in that forum not to damage the relationship between the student and their pursuit and the student and the teacher. Yeah. So they might not get the result they want, but the feedback's key.
Yeah, and it can still have been a very positive forward-moving experience to have done this exam. That's the ultimate, In a way, I'm not sure that coming out of an exams with 100% is something. Well, then you're not working at the right level. Then you should be working a level up. You should skip a year at uni, or you should, because you're not. There's no potential for growth, and it also means that you are not in the right set with the right peers that can push you. You're not playing in the right band, right? So, and likewise, if somebody is struggling to the extent where they are not meeting the criteria or the outcomes, well, then there's no problem. You just need to be in a different set. And I think it's very much a question of, are you working at the level and zone of proximity, as you'd call it pedagogically? Are you working at that place where you feel assisted in your learning, but you're not just swimming completely unassisted, out in the open waters, and you're not in the baby pool, with your armbands, but you're in a place where you're able to really grow in that space. Now, in terms of how do you then deliver feedback that is helpful? I find that the mission, the medal mission, is so simple. Yep. But what's key for me in that is that you're not just saying, "Oh, you met this criteria, you met this." You are actually showing, as the assessor or the teacher, I noticed that you did this. Right? I noticed. Right? Let's say, you've handed in this essay and you were asked to do this, and that. Yeah, put that aside. I noticed how you solved that. Yeah. Right? I thought that was interesting. So I'm saying something personal to you that I thought that you did really well that I noticed. Now, moving forward, okay, maybe you didn't meet outcome this, and that, and that's where, maybe that's why you didn't get the highest mark here. Yeah. So specifically, you could look to include this. Yeah. But I think, sorry to continue, but it's like, so for me, if you're just rattling off, you did this, you did this, you did that, without establishing the mission part is where I established, I actually read this. Yeah. Or I actually listened to this and I noticed that. And it doesn't have to be more one or two things. So when my students, for instance, listen to each other's things, it's not good enough for them to say, I like that. Oh, that was a good song. And I asked them to notice one or two things that they thought, ooh, I noticed that. A little bit like trying to remember your dreams. Can't necessarily remember the whole dream, and you forget. You can forget what you'll remember whether it's a nice dream or a good dream, but that's it. You can't remember the detail of it. But if you're able to say, "Oh, I noticed these two things, and it reminded me of this," then when you've established that, then the person that's receiving the feedback is like, "Oh, you are actually interested in me. You actually paid attention then you are open to the second thing, which would be, I think maybe I would have, in the pre-chorus, the melody could maybe go up and have this crescendo into the chorus, because I think the chorus is perfect. I think that the melody that you got there and the harmonic change is really great, but maybe the melody in the pre-chorus needs to have a different arc so that it sets me up for the chorus, for instance. But if I just said that, I don't trust you. If you just sort of say, that's what I think, without having told me that you actually really, you're interested in my song and in where I'm coming from, then it just becomes my opinion. Oh, if I was writing a song like that, that's what I'd do. And I go, yeah, whatever. because I don't trust you, and I don't particularly like you, because you're just opinionated. So having this, you open up by saying, this I think you did well. And it's interesting because when I do this with my students, I will always have one or two students that go, I don't need that. I don't care what you like. I don't, I just want to know what you think that I could do differently. Interestingly enough, those are nearly always the students, well, I'd say actually always the students that need it the most, that need to be told the most that they are good at what they're doing. They are overly critical on themselves. They often give really excellent feedback, and they learn to give, they kind of hear, all right, okay, actually these are the students who are a little bit softer than me. I'm tough and cool. These students need to be, I'll do it, right? I'll say, that was good. But for themselves, in my book, they're nearly always the students that need to be told the most. I think that was a killer song. And interestingly enough, as a group, as we develop over the year, it changes every year when students leave and another group of students come in. Mm-hmm. Interestingly, each year, the students that come back and get older, get more mature into the course, start taking on that responsibility where they suddenly go, oh my God, this is where I was last year. And so over the years, we have become softer in our approach and in our community and the way we are with each other, but we're much more to the core. It's like, often the students that is receiving the feedback will just sit and vividly take notes, because we sort of learn to attune to each other. We're not trying to be the same.
And I suppose it's very different depending on the setting, isn't it?
Mm.
If you're giving feedback with a group of people that you're working with every week for a year.
It's different. Trust. Yeah, and it's, you were asking me, well, what's different for me out here? Well, the difference is that I now do work with people over 4 years or more, where as an examiner you see a student once.
Yeah, for 15 minutes maybe, 10 minutes maybe.
At the same time, the lesson for me is the same. It's wonderful to be able to develop this relationship over a couple of years. It's a gift, really. It's an absolute pleasure. But one of the things that I've learned from the immediacy of only seeing a person a single time is that I actually still approach each lesson like that. I don't know if that student's going to come back. They might next week say, well, I've dropped out of the course. Well, I want another teacher, or, I've changed, I'm not going to be songwriting, I'm going to be a drummer, or, I don't know. So I always assume also with my private students that this might be the last time that I see them for a lesson. And I don't take that for granted that they want to come back. I think so for me, every lesson contains this medal.
Absolutely.
And every lesson, I wouldn't want somebody, okay, let's say gardening, I'm out the front and I'm gardening, and somebody walks over from the other side of the street and says, oh, you need to water that plant, or you're doing this wrong. I would just go, okay, goodbye. Yeah. But that person comes over and go, oh, wow, I like the work you, I walk past here every day, and I really like how your roses are doing. I've got that plant as well. That's really tricky. This is what's worked for me.
Yeah. Context. Yeah. Care, engagement, interest, as you said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, why is this so important for me? I mean, I've had wonderful teachers over the years, and I think in education a lot has happened. I think, you know, there's so much wonderful material out there as well, you know, podcasts and books and seminars and I think peer level wise, you know, more institutions are better at you know, receiving peer feedback and supporting each other, but I still think we can do better. Teaching can be an incredibly lonely place. And if it becomes lonely, you become defensive. It's easy to kind of build a shell where then when somebody comes and says, hey, how's it going? Then it's all fine. And it's harder to let somebody into that space.
It's really interesting. That really is interesting. There's so much to go. There's so much to go at.
There is a lot, and I think, you know, I've just had this image of, you know, we need role models, no doubt. You know, we need people that speak up for us, and you know, we just lost an amazing artist this week, Ozzy Osbourne, and I was never particularly a Black Sabbath fan in terms of, you know, I never saw him in concert either, but he was an incredible advocate for music and music education. And I saw this clip that I think I posted as well, where you just saw a group of children in a music class playing Crazy Train.
Yeah.
And it just filled me with joy. More than watching him play Crazy Train. It was just, you know, and for me, it was just the perfect clip to sort of as a legacy. It was just interesting. I just thought, if that was a legacy to go out, why, you know, I would have lived a happy life. You know, it's just the most wonderful thing to see a group of primary school children just playing marimbas and drums and performing one of your songs. It's just, and that for me, that completes, that's the full circle. You know, that it goes to the top and down to the start, you know, and it's like that we're there. And yes, I am, most of my teaching now is focused around original material, and it gives an incredible freedom. I mean, I'm so privileged. Every week I get in and I get to hear the first seed of somebody's song, you know, how about this, or this is something I wrote, or this, you know, and I get to be in these groups where we're sharing these things, but not to forgetting that we're also able to sort of reach forward and say, well, okay, you can then go and inspire the younger, you know, the ones that are just coming, to find that, so it doesn't become just for the selected ones, or the, you know, the few that has the privilege to have the support there already, so that you're waking up this, you know, the sense of community, which kind of leads us back to where our conversation started, you know, that we're back to where the sense of belonging. We're here together and we're playing this song and we're having a lot of fun doing it.
And I think that's a perfect place for us to push pause.
Yeah.
And, you know, and this is my MO with these things, you know, is like, can this please just be the first one that we do? Because there's so much to dig deeper into. But before we do that, you are developing a podcast yourself.
Yes, I am. And actually, I think what we've been talking about here today just confirms even more for me why I want to start this new series. It's called Teaching Out Loud. And it really is, it's going to be conversations like this where we are I'm talking to artists, educators, uncovering really what inspires them to teach, what sustains it, what drains it, how they're finding the balance between teaching and their own art, how you will find that it shifts direction, like it did for me. I started teaching, then I had a long journey, and actually many years where I didn't teach, working in the studio, but maybe I was still teaching. You know, it's that sort of the learning part. So I'll be talking to not just educators, but also people that started their own methods and practices and creative platforms of their own. So yeah, that's what that series is going to be about. So thanks for asking.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Well, Eva, thank you so much for your time this morning.
No, it's a pleasure, Paul. Thanks for asking me to come and talk to you.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Fascinating chat. Eva, where can people connect with you? Where's the best way for them to reach out?
So when this podcast is out, it's called Teaching Out Loud, and it'll be on all available. So where you get your podcast. My Instagram, my sort of tag name is Eva Brandt Music, and I have a website as well. But Instagram tag Eva Brandt Music is the best way to write to me as well, and just check in and say hello.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Eva. Have a great day.
Yeah, thank you. You too. And I'll speak to you soon.
I'll catch you soon.
Yeah,
all
thank
right.
you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.